Well, good day, everybody who's watching. It's
We're
evening this
yeah,
time for me. Usually it's morning, but now it's evening, and it's morning where Tim is. Usually it's afternoon, and we
yeah.
have a very big light and day thing going on with our Zoom cameras.
Yeah.
Um,
I've
I will be
lightened mine as
playing.
well to make sure it doesn't look like I'm just sitting in a cave, but that hasn't really helped.
Well, I think you should play devil's advocate
Mm.
for this one, and
Okay.
I will play the part of.
Jesus.
Well, I was going to say the righteous because I'm
Okay.
always right. Uh, but I'll be playing the part of Jesus. We're going to do a Carmen skit right now called The Champion.
Yes.
You be the
Yes.
devil. I'll be Jesus. I've got the hands that knew no sin that blocked every punch. And you be saying, and then when I knock you down, then instead of going 1, 2, 3, we start counting down.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Jesus stands up, chops off the devil's head, and
I've
that
been
is.
I've been thinking about this a lot because like over Easter is that very thing that like the heavy emphasis on Jesus needing to actually be some like violent or powerful person who overthrows, like we personify it as in
Mhm.
that kind of overthrowing the devil, but we use the language and we look forward to like the stuff in Revelation people actually believe to be real is the kind of the armies of heaven overthrowing, and all the other stuff becomes isn't as literal and stuff, but like what like I just we literally just had a time where in the Garden of Gethsemane Peter or one of the disciples cuts off the ear of the servant, and Jesus says to him, "This is not what my kingdom is." Like,
Yeah.
it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that how the literal stuff of like care for the poor, the orphan, the widow,
Hmm.
don't be a people of violence, be a people of peace. And we're like, yes, that's amazing. We follow Jesus, and now let's rally around him with military power. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah,
I would
sorry.
say three things to that.
Oh,
One
excellent.
is
You should
I
start with
was
3, 2.
three. Third,
Yeah.
third. I was at YC conference in Saskatoon once, and
Mm,
there was the guy who's preaching. He put on the front of the stage a microphone and he wrapped a rubber snake about it around it. And then he was in the back and he was talking about Jesus died and all the demons in hell were celebrating, and the devil was giving a speech that they'd won, they'd overcome, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, and as the devil's preaching, a, a figure starts moving towards the back, and as it gets closer, the demons are quiet and quiet and quiet, and all of a sudden he grabs the rubber snake and he just starts swinging it. It's like, we have overcome, we have overcome. Um, so yes, that one. The second one, I would say that a lot of our military fondness or merging with the gospel has to do a lot with the early interpretation of it and how they wanted to. They use the same language for Jesus, a lot like Caesar with
mm,
lords and stuff like that, and that's
mm,
how they became uh, so powerful is with their military might. And so when you
yeah,
use language like that, like even the good news was a victory,
yeah.
or the gospel,
Mm,
evangelion, or I didn't say that right, but uh, they use that kind of language.
mm,
And first or third, depending which way I want to go, um, I would say it gets a lot of the Christus Victor Christology, where Christ
mm,
is victorious, which I just listened to a whole podcast where they talked about different kind of Christologies.
mm,
And it was quite interesting. Like they landed on Christus Victor, but not so much that he defeated Satan and the demons and all that kind of stuff, but he defeated the rulers and empires. Like he defeated hate, he defeated greed, he defeated all these things that would disrupt shalom in the world, and he's victorious over that, not the devil and the angels, or the devils and the demons. Because depending on what you view on them, real or not, or Antichrist is just being anti-Christian, and the devil being a product of man's sin, that kind of desire in us to be evil. So that would be where I would get the idea of like Carmen with the and that kind of thing. And it's powerful imagery, right? Like that's what Revelation is powerful imagery to rouse a church that's being persecuted, and to show them victory. And we all know the church is being persecuted in the West all the time, and so we need this imagery to pump us up, get us excited.
People just don't take me seriously anymore, and they just think I'm irrelevant, that I'm just not keeping up with the times, that I'm
some guy said happy holidays to me, I almost punched him in the face.
In the love of Jesus, of course.
Jesus is the reason for the season, buddy.
There's I share this really quickly. I think I mentioned it to you before, Derek, but my brother Jesse put me onto this graphic novel called The Harrowing of Hell, which very much takes upon it actually looking at that idea of Jesus as the suffering servant through the context of the harrowing of hell. And one of the amazing things the artist does, besides the way that graphically it's I think is a fantastic book, but one of the amazing things that artist also does is actually what Jesus has to face as part of the harrowing and part of the time in death, is also having to see what the church in his name becomes, which I think is just a fascinating and a really beautiful and unique take on it. So I just, as we're talking this morning, kind of highly recommend this, and all props to my little brother Jesse who kind of put me onto this. So
that guy, just unreal. You told me about that, and I have yet to order it, but I'm going to tomorrow. I'm going to make a little note.
In the future. But no, sorry,
I'm heading home. I'm going to get it.
I didn't mean to sideline your lovely opening.
We are all for getting sponsors. So if Harrowing of Hell wants to sponsor this podcast,
or Carmen, whichever,
or Carmen, I don't know if I will let Carmen sponsor. I mean, I don't think we see eye to eye theologically anymore.
But when it comes to music and dance moves, I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Me and Carmen.
It is so funny, like, to look back in your life and realize, like, I just remember being so excited when the new Carmen videos would come out, like the actual VHS ones.
I had the Carmen Riot ones. Mom, if you're watching, I had Carmen Riot.
A righteous invasion of truth.
Oh, we're gonna have a riot. And then the Mortensons, Sarah Mortensen was in Bible school with me, and they lent me, and I never gave back. Although I don't think I have it anymore. Like Carmen the Champion and Carmen Saint Bite the Dust or something like that. It was a couple of videos. So I will put.
Well, let's get into our Bible today, because I think we're already.
I could talk about Carmen all day. Although talking about old bands we used to listen to, my Easter sermon or the sunrise service was "God is doing a new thing" from DC Talk. That was my thing. New thing, like THANG. Although I put new like NEW, but I guess on the album it's new NU.
Oh,
So I
is it
didn't have
really? I
that
didn't
part.
realize. Yeah, yeah. I still remember as there was an a cappella group called Rhythm and News.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when they first came to our church, and I was like, "This is lit." I was like, "They're making all those noises with their mouth, and they're Christians. This is amazing." I have to tell everybody.
Man, I remember Rhythm and News. Now I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
have to listen to that again. Thank you.
Oh
Um,
man. Yeah,
and I was
we're
just
here.
reminded the other day of Burlap to Cashmere. You remember that?
Ooh, yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Boy, we could go over all the Petra. Unreal.
yeah. Amazing, amazing. Well, let's
And then
let's
Audio
pivot.
Adrenaline, Big House about universalism, apparently.
No breakfast in hell.
I,
Yeah.
oh man, that's unreal.
Uh,
Yeah. So that was our introduction, and we
if you're
spanned
still
over
with us.
30
Yeah.
years. We talked about Easter demons, Chris's Victor, gone some Chrisology, some 80s
Same.
music, 90s music.
Yeah.
Um, I think we've covered everything. What we
Yeah.
like to do in this podcast, we start out big and then we focus it.
we,
Oh,
fu-
sorry,
we
I hit the mic. We focus it like a funnel. Start with everything.
yeah.
I have to do
Pour it
the
all
hand
in.
gestures.
Pour it all in. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening to the audio only, Derek is literally drawing a V in the
Yeah.
air, drawing us to that point of focus today, which lands us in Galatians 5, verses 1 to 12. Shall I read this morning, Derek? And then,
You know what? I would
um,
love you to Tim. What?
okay.
I would love you to Tim. I would love you, Tim, to read this morning,
Yeah.
this evening, depending where you
Yeah.
are.
All right. Excellent. So, our Galatians 5, 1 to 12. So, Christ has truly set us free. Now make sure that you stay free and don't get tied up again in slavery to the law. Listen, I, Paul, tell you this. If you are counting on circumcision to make you right with God, then Christ will be of no benefit to you. I'll say it again. If you are trying to find favor with God by being circumcised, you must obey every regulation in the whole law of Moses. For if you are trying to make yourself right with God by keeping the law, you have been cut off from Christ. You have fallen away from God's grace. But we who live by the Spirit eagerly wait to receive by faith the righteousness God has promised to us. For when we place our faith in Christ Jesus, there is no benefit in being circumcised or being uncircumcised. What is important is faith expressing itself in love. You are running the race so well. Who has held you back from following the truth? It certainly isn't God, for he is the one who called you to freedom. This false teaching is like a little yeast that spreads through the whole batch of dough. I am trusting the Lord to keep you from believing false teachings. God will judge that person, whoever he is, who has been confusing you. Dear brothers and sisters, if I were still preaching that you must be circumcised, as some say I do, why am I still being persecuted? If I were no longer preaching salvation through the cross of Christ, no one would be offended. I just wish that those troublemakers who want to mutilate you by circumcision would mutilate themselves.
Throwing some shade there at the end, eh?
Oh, man. Yeah, yeah, we can tell what side of the bed Paul woke up on this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What was there anything in particular besides Paul's shade that was jumping out at you this morning, Derek?
Well, yeah. You know what? I'm gonna wait to go second because mine's gonna lead right into this whole thing.
Okay, okay. So I will say uh, the whole concept of freedom, I think, is really beautifully put here as that kind of underpinning of that of recognizing what it is that God is doing, not calling us from one kind of slavery into another, but calling us from slavery to freedom. And I think the phrase that I really love in this passage in the New Living Translation as we have it today is, what is important is faith expressing itself in love. I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful phrasing. So yeah. All right. Should I just set the timer and then you can get us
Sure.
going? All
Yeah.
right. Hit it. Ready for you whenever
Okay.
you are.
So Galatians,
Yeah.
Paul has already gone through um, this this part of his missionary journey,
Yeah.
planted a church here, and a bunch of Gentiles, and he's saying you guys don't have to get circumcised. And then these
Yeah.
other people from a different church come in and like, no, you have to be circumcised,
Yeah.
get circumcised. So they convince a bunch of them to get circumcised, and even Peter, who's you know sheepish, shall we say, starts hanging out with these guys and won't even eat with the Gentiles, the ones that
Yeah.
are uncircumcised. And so
Mm.
Paul is just irate, and he writes
Mm.
this message saying, "You guys are a bunch of dinks." Is
Sorry.
essentially what it is.
Talk
You guys
about
are a bunch of little wieners, as
talk about a cultural throwback right there.
yeah, as as Dean Pinder would say, you guys are a bunch of little wieners.
Yeah.
What are you
Yeah.
doing? Uh,
Mm.
yeah. So, like, what sticks out
Mm.
for me with this passage is the idea that we have so many outward um, laws or
Mm.
rituals that we make people fall in line with to prove
Mm.
that they are in our club,
Mm.
and has nothing to do with like it may have worked in the past, but it doesn't necessarily work now. And what I get out of this is Paul saying, you guys are like, replace circumcision with any, like, going to church on Sunday. I don't know, LGBTQ. Replace it with any of the. You have to have Sundays on, or church on Sunday mornings. You have to not have tattoos. You can't swear. I don't know. Name whatever it is. All these little rules that we have, and Paul here is saying, no. If you believe, then that's the most important part. If you're trying to make yourselves righteous, yourselves right with God by keeping the law, you have been cut off from Christ. You've
Mm.
fallen away from God's grace. And like you
Mm.
said, um, what about love? What's
Yeah.
important is faith expressing itself in love.
Mm.
Even if you're doing, like, I'm reminded of I do all these things, but if I do them without love, it's like clanging of
Mm.
cymbals,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I can do all these things. I can go to church on Sunday. I can read my Bible. I can pray. I can do whatever. But if I'm not loving someone else who has a very different experience than I do,
Mm.
then I'm missing the point. I'm
Mm.
I'm these Galatians that are saying, no, you guys gotta cut all this stuff off of you if you're gonna be part of our group.
Mm. And it's interesting, I think, as well, for me to kind of be reminded of the fact that, how many times we become very militant about the things that we're doing, as you said at the beginning. It's the things that they were doing or that had happened to them that then they said this becomes the way you get in, as
Yeah,
compared to what the advocation is for from Paul is that, like, we all come through the grace of God, like, and it's like we literally all come through the door the same way. We all come because of the same reason.
yeah,
And and to then insist that other people kind of find something that puts us in a position of kind of power, like, and I like, I appreciate in that, like, right before, what's important is faith expressing itself in love. It says there is no benefit in being circumcised or being uncircumcised. And I
yeah,
was like, that's it, right? Like, because it's so easy. And I remember this particularly in Bible college. when I started to get a sense that like theology was bigger than I had ever knew or believed it could be, or
Mm-hmm.
um and that maybe understanding the love of God was bigger than it. And I hit that opposite swing of the pendulum, and I was like, the church is just, following false teaching and has become too legalistic. And I became legalistic about my freedom, which obviously is the thing Paul's talking about here, is that what you perceive as freedom can also become legalism. And it's and what changes then is how we actually approach and welcome and are with fellow believers who have come the same way, which is
Mm-hmm.
through the saving grace of God and Jesus Christ.
I like talking about Bible college. When I was in Eston before I moved away, they've got like these pamphlets in the back at the Bible church, and there's one pamphlet that I believe is called "How to Be a Christian" or "How to Live the Christian Life." What one of those two things, and it's got about 12 things inside. Number 6 was live like Jesus.
Interesting.
There was go to church. There was read your
Yeah.
Bible. There was do give tithe. There was all these different things, but then number 6 was live like Jesus. How to live a
Mm,
Christian life. Jesus is 6,
mm,
and I think that's very telling of how a lot of us
mm,
view the Christian faith, where it's very yes and no's, right? Like it's very black and white, and
mm.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to think that way. Like it was
Mm,
you do this, you don't do this.
yeah.
That was complete opposite. If you're
Mm,
doing this, you're backsliding,
yeah,
and we need
yeah.
to get you back into the group here.
Yeah.
And never
Yeah.
once did I think about their love of Jesus or their love of other people or um, what God was doing in them or
Mm,
the boundaries they were pushing and the comfort that they were stretching in and stuff. It was
mm.
always, well, they're outside of the gate that I put up.
Yeah.
How do I get them back?
Yeah, yeah. 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 Yeah, and as you say, like, how do you get them back in the way that then you can accept them, or maybe you can accept yourself, like, that. Yeah, just like, think about how many times I, publicly, people thought I was a good kid, and inside myself, I always, I remember saying to myself so many times, if you only knew who I really was,
Yeah,
if you only knew what I really did. But I also
yeah,
didn't want them to actually know that, because I liked having the position, being the good kid, right?
yeah,
And then it's like, then you realize, oh, it's okay in the right circumstance with the right altar call. It's okay to actually admit that you're maybe not perfect,
yeah,
but you're not perfect, and you've now done the right altar call. So now you can go back, and nothing had to change, like nothing
yeah,
had to. And and uh, you know in that sense too, that it's all about these kind of instant things we see. And obviously the whole kind of celebrity Christian thing, in the way that we can actually monitor it and watch it in social media right now, is such a telling thing, where you get the kind of the extreme sides, where like the first thing someone's like, look, we have to embrace this person, they're now a believer,
oh yeah.
and they've got the platform, so let's
Justin
do,
Bieber is a Christian.
yeah. Yeah,
He came out with an album.
yeah, and he's led a song at Hillsong, and
Kanye West
yeah.
has a gospel song.
Yeah, yeah, and a
We'll
choir,
forget
and he
about
does
everything
it,
else.
does Sunday mornings. But then the other side of it too is that skeptics, where it's just like, where they're like, yeah, we need to actually see the fruit of this repentance in them before we'll trust that they become
Yeah,
Christian too. And you're just like, wow, like, Christianity, even from that, in that moment of where we would say, here's a proclamation of salvation,
yeah,
already is just so burdened by either performance of absolute acceptance, or performance of absolute skepticism, and very little of it at least I find for myself, even, is, how do you sit with that, just like celebrating, and that reminder too, that as someone has now just entered, entered through that gate, or,
Yeah.
taken a step along that path, that's exactly where I am too, because of Jesus, and not because I've learned how to, navigate the culture, or, found where my voice has power or authority, but where I recognize that humility and saying that, it's by God's grace, it's by God's
Yeah.
grace.
Like it's funny how much time and effort we put into trying to figure out who's Christian, who's not, right? Like
Mm.
who's on our team, who's not. And also, like, if I got to be careful how I say this, but if you're working, like, if you're judging people on their works and what they're doing, um, is that not taken away from God's grace? Now, I preface that by saying, there's lots in the Bible about know good trees by their fruit and stuff. But I would preface that by saying, is the fruit you're looking at mean that it has to look like your fruit, or can it look like something else? If it's good fruit, is it allowed to look different than yours? Like if they don't fit into your box of whatever, but they're still loving people, loving
Yeah.
God, doing all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't look like
Mm.
you would have it. Like
Yeah.
this
But
this
like,
kind of
oh
okay.
god. I was gonna say, I think the thing about, like, good fruit is, it's not just about what you see, right? Like, it's what it tastes
Well,
like,
yeah.
right? Like, so yeah, go.
Well, okay. This kind of gets into my um, deconstruction analogy, which I won't get into now. But uh, like, it's almost like the church or your denomination, whatever, is like the HOA, like the homeowners association,
Mhm.
and every house in our area has to look a certain way. Like
Mm.
it can only fall into these certain colors.
Mm.
You have to mow the grass. Your bush is going to be this high. Your mailbox
Yeah.
has to be this. Blah blah blah. There's so many rules so that when people come and see it, it looks all good. Doesn't
Mm.
matter what you're doing on the inside, right?
Mm.
You could be
Mm.
selling drugs, or you could be housing refugees, like
Mm.
two very different things.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Or I would say, well, no, it matters. Like, what are you using your house for? Is it to show love? Is it to provide shelter for people?
Mm.
I don't care
Yeah.
what the outside looks like. I want to know what the
Mm.
purpose of the inside is.
Mm. Mm. And I think that, like, it's a weird thing that we've come to believe that there is, both a holism to, God's saving grace, and yet
Yeah,
also this important dichotomy that we care about, this kind of outward expression,
yeah.
like I didn't grow up with a good theology of the body. I'm not sure I have one yet, you know, either. But like, there was this very kind of specific thing that the body was the corrupt part of the human that would then at death, free the incorruptible part of you, your soul. And and at that moment, then you can actually start to that's the only way you get to heaven, is by actually being able to shed the thing which is corrupt and sinful.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and uh and yet, as you
A little
say,
bit of
we have this.
Gnosticism.
Yeah. Yeah, and alongside of that great bit of heresy,
Yeah.
we also have this, like, emphasis that actually what we're going to entirely judge you on is that performance of the
Mm,
physical, of what we see in front of us. And as you say, like, I remember talking to, or I remember hearing statistics about how much domestic abuse is within churches. And it was weird because, like, it was horrifying in that it was a fact that I had to look at. and
yeah.
and I was shocked, and I found it shocking to hear about it. And then what was weird was that it was like, alongside of that was this thing, but at least they're not, at least it's being at least it's being done in heterosexual relationships, which is where God's gift to the world is. And you know what I mean? Like it was better that you had domestic abuse in heterosexual married Christian relationships than you accept a gay couple who may be more loving and more compassionate and more generous and joyful in the love that they share for one another. And and it's weird that it's weird the way that lines get drawn
Because I
to
view both of
divide.
them as sin, but at
Yeah,
least one is,
is a
frowned
better
upon,
yeah,
the other one
yeah,
celebrated, right?
yeah. And it is that but it's that thing, like, yeah, well, I
Well,
think
that
I've
was like when
been
I
about.
was in Eston. I asked the kids a question. I'm like, okay, there's one guy who spent his whole life serving his community, loving everyone. If people needed help with something, he helped them. He donated his organs, he donated his house, he donated his time, his energy, quick to forgive, abounding in love, all these kind of things. Never accepted Jesus in his heart. Other guy, murderer, rapist, has lived his entire life just for him. Um, all these terrible, terrible, horrific things. On his deathbed, he says a sinner's prayer. Which one goes to heaven? And they were like, oh, well, the guy on the deathbed, right? Like, I would never frame the question that way again, but it's, it's,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
very few, that's one of the rules, right? Like, that you have to follow is saying
Mm,
the Lord's Prayer. It doesn't matter how you live your life.
mm,
It's that, right?
yeah. And that thing too, like where,
I hope people are
you know
following us and they're not just like, you guys are heretics and not even listening to this whole thing.
well, it's fine. You call me a heretic. I think heresy gives birth to.
At this point, with some of the stuff's going on, I will wear the badge of heretic if it means that I am more loving.
Yeah, well, but what is important is faith expressing itself in love. And
Yeah.
like, I do think spend some time with a child who you care about. Don't just randomly pick
If
somebody and be like, no, this is loving to you
I
and I
was going
can
to say,
beat you.
if Mark Driscoll would
Yeah.
name me a heretic, then I think I'm living my life all right.
Yeah. I'd get a badge and t-shirts
I
made.
can.
Yeah. But
Sorry.
find a child who you love, who you care about, like, and
Yeah.
not, and this isn't just some like abstract thing, like seriously, and then look at the different ways that you express that you want them to know that you actually mean that.
Yeah.
And as you come up against their sense of their own identity and individuality, their sense of actually taking and understanding the words that you've said and throwing them back in your face, find out the different ways that you have to show and that expression of love, and also to ask yourself, did you actually mean that? you know
Yeah.
because we as adults do a lot of filtering, and we give each other both a lot of grace, and also cut people off from that grace with all the kind of different loopholes that we think we have to make as adults. But
Mhm.
and then what gets skewed is that kind of that message, that action, that tangible place of love. But with children, they will call you out on it. Like, you can't tell a child that you love them and then refuse them candy that they think is essential to them understanding your love. And you have to still hold to that, that you don't just want to give them candy and ruin their life, but you also want them to know that that is somehow loving.
Yeah.
But it's not it but you need to do that in a non-abusive way, because you can't just say, here's all the rules, here's all the regulations, and you will one day realize that I did all this
Uh,
because I love you. You want them to know right now that that they're loved, because
yeah.
otherwise they won't believe it in the future. And that's like, what does that look like as Christians? Like, if we want people to not just when the, when the earth gets remade, or we all get called into eternity, whatever that all looks like, if you want people to know right now that you love them, and not just at this end when we hope that everything turns out the way we've been working towards,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like for them to know that you love them now?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it kind of makes me think that it goes along with like what you were talking with the body and stuff is just without telling people you God loves them and stuff like that. It's just get them through their time on earth. It's gonna be crappy. They're gonna be confused. They're gonna be angry and everything. Once they get to heaven, I'll explain everything to them, and then they get eternity. But like this is the bad time. Like this is the trial you gotta. This is the rain you gotta go through
Mm,
before you get to the sunshine, kind of thing, right?
mm, mm.
And well, that's terrible theology.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know what else to call
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's, yeah. That's the thing, is it doesn't matter if it's,
Crapology.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's the thing. I've stopped caring about, I've not stopped caring about, but I care less about kind of the kind of the lines of heresy and orthodoxy, and I care much more about, about, is that belief leading us deeper into the mystery and practice of God's love?
Jesus had his feet washed by a prostitute. He hung out with the tax collector. He was followed around by fishermen and stuff. Like
Yeah, but Derek,
every
there's
single
five
social,
there's 5 points of following, of being a
yeah,
Christian, that are more important than everything
yeah.
that
If you want to
Jesus
live
did.
like Jesus, find a prostitute and get her to wash your feet with her hair.
And
Find
some
some
nice
fishermen and
perfume.
hang out. Find an IRS guy and go hang out with them at their house. These are these are things that Jesus did. But
Mm,
like all the religious people were like, he's not fitting into our mold.
mm,
Like he cannot be what
mm,
is, and that mold was put there in the Old Testament. Like they were following the rules, they were following the letter of the law very much, and they missed the point.
mm.
What in our own life, in our churches, are we following to the letter of the law and we're missing the point? We're missing forest for the trees.
Mm, mm,
Like like if Jesus was here, honestly, I would think that I would be like, he's kind of on the edge. Like he's he's a little farther more liberal than I'm willing to go. I honestly think that he would be, and I'm saying that. Then I think of other people that I have in my life, and I'd be like, you would hate him.
yeah.
You would
So
absolutely despise
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Is like, is that, how did you phrase that? That was, it was really well. Um, it was that, what in our own life and what in the life of the church,
Yeah,
are we following so close to the letter of the law that we're missing, the grace and the love of
yeah,
God for ourselves as well as for other people?
yeah,
I think that's, the timer's gone. So I think that, for me,
yeah,
it's a, beautiful question to end
yeah.
on.
Well,
But
and
feel free to.
I think it's an important one because all I'm seeing in the news and stuff is fights and what with different groups and
Mm,
whatnot. But there's no love between the two, and there's no love within themselves. It's all
yeah,
this is this is the way to do it. Like
yeah.
this is the framework, and
Mm, mm.
yeah,
Well, my
yeah.
goodness, from rhythm and news and
From the mouth
Carmen
of
into.
babes comes.
Well, we should probably get some babes on then, because that could help. That's right. Yes, 50% of what you get here is from the mouth of a babe, and
Yeah.
then the other 50% comes from England. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say the cold touch lips of Tim Miller, like Isaiah, who
I thought
shall
you, I thought you,
speak?
I thought you said
cleans her
cold. I thought you
cold,
said cold, and I was
cold,
like, yeah.
cold, dead, lifeless lips.
And the metal ring certainly doesn't help. Yeah.
No, no. Anyway, I'm
Excellent. Lovely to be with you guys. And
yeah,
as always, contact, connect.
yeah,
And we're sorry we did record something last week for Easter and the audio did not work out at all. Did you share that one anyways? I can't.
yeah. It's out.
Okay.
It's just my
Yeah.
volume's louder because
Yeah.
my mom. I almost missed her birthday. But I didn't realize what day it was. And then all of a
Fair
sudden
enough.
at like 8:30 my time, 11:30 her time, I realized it was her birthday. I thought the birthday was
Nice.
the next day. And so I called and stuff. She didn't answer, but then I talked to her next day. And she was like, what am I in trouble for? I'm like, you left some kind of comment on or whatever. It was her trying to be funny, which I get. I have jokes online that rarely hit. So I get it. I get it a lot.
Well, happy belated birthday, Mother Wilson.
Yes. Happy belated birthday. And well, Mother's Day is this Sunday. So
Is it?
Yeah, it's the 8th. Here in Canada. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. No, we do ours in
you guys
before
don't love
Easter.
your mothers.
No, we don't.
Happy
No.
Mother's Day to those in Canada.
Amen.
Happy Women's Day. Okay.
There you go. All right. Take care, everyone. Peace.
Bye.